You're tuning into the Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal podcast. If you have a story or a guest recommendation that you think others need to hear, email me at wildweirdandsometimesnormal@gmail.com. Let's get this started. Alex and Brett, kick it!
Wild. Wild. Weird. And sometimes wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. And sometimes normal.
Are you looking to buy a home in New Jersey, escape the city and move to the suburbs? Finally purchase a vacation home on the lake or down the shore? Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who are retiring and moving out of state. If so, let me help you. Keller Williams and the Real Estate Professional Group have what you need to make your goals come true. Reach out and have a conversation with someone who will put you first. Contact Brian McCoach at 856-321-1212 or email brianmccoach@kw.com. Welcome to another episode of Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal. I'm your host, Brian, and tonight we have returning champion, RM Almonte. Ramon, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a while. It's been since we did the podcast last year, was it? But then
I think we recorded last year and it came out in January. So we recorded in December, I think. Yeah, so we got like 6 months, 7 months under us.
Yeah.
How's life going, man?
It's going pretty good. Been focusing a lot on books. When the last we spoke, I was trying to do this full time and basically living off my savings and then just doing this full time, whatever it takes. But I had to go back to work. So bartending, haven't done that in years. So it was pretty good. But it's the synchronicity of it that as soon as I put my mind to find a job, I think it took like 2-3 days to find it. Before I would send out resumes, but wasn't really intent on it, and been focusing a lot on manifestation, just changing my mindset. And for example, I've done it many times, but it's with the bigger things is always other things come up, like the way we grew up around money, the way we look at money. Money's dirty, money's the root of all evil. When I was growing up, the only people who had money were and not to make this like a racial thing, but where I grew up, like the people who had money were white people, because most of them, like I grew up on, just to give everybody a good idea, I grew up near Columbia University. So when you went to Broadway, that's where people who had more money lived, and it was a nice area. I grew up like in a crack infested area, and so only drug dealers and really like white people had money. So that kind of gets into your mind. For friends of mine that I went to college with, for them it was just like the people around them didn't have it either, because they grew up in trailer parks. So it's not to make it sound like a color thing, it's just a mindset thing more than anything else. So that is what consistently always like trying to get over, because money is a tool. Money is a form of energy that we transfer, right? So you do a service for me and I pay you for that service. And in turn for me paying you the service, you use that money to take care of your family and things like that. So the way we look at money is extremely important. But just to give a quick background for those who didn't catch the last, I'm a metaphysical sci-fi writer. So I write about aliens, traveling in space in a science fiction kind of way. So a lot of the things that I learned when I was doing my own podcast a couple of years back called The 100th Monkey, all those things that I learned, my own meditation practice over the years, I put it into my books. And for those of you on YouTube, you could see the books in the background there. And I'll just give a quick thing about the books. So first one I have is Scratching the Cosmic Conscience. Second one I have is a series called United Earth. And that one starts off with Rough Beginning, Exile, and Despair and Hope. And a lot of the aliens which we will get into, a lot of the aliens that I write about in a science fiction kind of way are based off people's contactees and abductees and things like that. So I was trying to get lots of information.
Money is a funny thing. You want money. It's like hard to get, so even you grew up in poor areas and in the crack area. So the only people are drug dealers, they're committing a crime to get money. The jobs and correct me at any point if I'm wrong in any of this, but the type of jobs that are there, you have like some corner stores, you have some like maybe some family restaurants, you have these other things that aren't paying a lot of money. So in the 80s, I don't know what minimum wage was in the 80s, but I started working, I think my first job was like 95 or 96, and it was $5.05 an hour.
Yeah.
So you would work, whatever, I was a kid, but I'd still work 25 hours a week, 25 times that should be 120, which is just crazy. Like I just spent 25 hours to get $125. Like that, there's no value in that today. Then like whatever, but you would get your check and that's like $70, $60, $70.
Yeah. After they tax you.
After they tax you, right. And then try to feed a family on that. I mean, granted, people have 2, 3 jobs, all this stuff, because there aren't the opportunities there for them, or you have to go travel, or, there can be, I know the services are called like a maid service or like lawn service or things like that, where maybe you could get more money, but now you're traveling to a different area away from your family, spending more time, public transportation, things like this that take a while. You have to be there on time, or you're waiting 20 minutes. It's all this like backbreaking stuff that like the system has designed to keep people locked in there. Now, before the internet, like you were stuck there. Like
yeah.
Hopefully your parents, and they did for you. You said you went to Columbia. Were you in Columbia?
No. I didn't go to Columbia University. I lived near that.
You live near Columbia. Okay. But so your parents sacrificed for you, you were able to, go to college, do these things. And, that's great. But at least now with the internet, some of these kids, now, I mean, I think their values are askew, but like wanting to be like, I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to be a YouTube star. As like some 10-year-old has like more money than I'll ever have in my entire life because I do like stupid tricks on the internet. But still, at least there is an opportunity there for them. It's a shitty system that's set up, man, like this. And
it is, but it's completely up to each individual person to change their reality, because we're coming together, and this includes whatever conscious being, we're coming together to manifest this reality. And that's why they keep you focused on, a lot of the negative stuff so you can create that reality. But if
this is low vibration thoughts and things.
Exactly. So when I was talking about like, for example, I'll give you a quick example, smaller things that I've manifested. Like I remember I was telling my wife when we were living in Japan, I want a katana sword, and I just wanted like a practice one. And because they're the real ones are illegal, but not illegal. Like if they're authentic and you get the authentic thing with them, then you can have it as an art piece, but you're not really allowed to have weapons. So anyway, I wanted a fake one and a practice katana sword. And all of a sudden the next day I meet up with a friend of mine. He's like, hey, I'm moving back to the States. I have all these practice swords, where I don't know why, but his mom told him that I've never heard that before, where they're not allowed to give knives. You have to sell it. So he sold it to me for like 5 yen, which comes out to right now less than maybe 2 cents in American currency. So it just, it appeared. And that happened again with, what is that machine called? What's the machine called that I can't remember right now? The one that heats up the water and then drips it back out.
Humidifier?
No, so you could drink it.
Some type of purifier.
Yeah, some type of water purifier. And I wanted one, and I was going to buy one. And I ran into this lady who taught English, and she was like, hey, I have this. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So, like the synchronicity of it. But to do that on a bigger scale, what I'm starting to realize is that, all right, so for example, you might want a million viewers, a million listeners. And there's a part of us that, like I want a million book sales. There's a part of us that feels we're not worthy of that, or somehow emotionally, because it's all emotion at the end. We're blocking it one way or another. So a lot of the visualization programs that you'll hear on YouTube and other people talk about is when you're visualizing how you want your life to be, you have to have an emotional reaction to it. So it's like it already happened. So for example, we want 1 million viewers for you. So you have to, when you're doing your show, you have to visualize there's 1 million people listening, but to react, how would you be as a podcaster if you had 1 million viewers? Obviously, by then you should be able to quit your job. You should be doing this full time, and
You're like viewing in on a past event and experiencing that emotion in real time.
yeah, but it's
And
not a past event. It's hasn't
yeah, but
happened
that's how you
yet.
want to look back
But
on it, right? Yeah,
yes,
but it's happening in the
exactly,
future. But I know how I felt. Now, like, oh, I think when I win the lottery, I'm going to be very happy. Like, I'm looking back on it, like, hey, I already won the lottery. I remember how, like, what the air smelled like that day. I remember the feeling of
exactly.
like, I'm never going to have bills again. But then you're projecting that into the future, but you need to put all these, tangible feelings, but how you felt, how it smelled, how you're going to look. So good. I'm sorry.
No, no, you're absolutely right. So there's several people that talk about that, and Neville Goddard is one of them. He's pioneer, and he learned most of his stuff. For those of you that are not Christian, he talks it in a very Christian base, but if you really listen to his message, you'll understand that it matches what Buddhism said, a lot of. So even though he talks in a very Christian base, it expands beyond that. And he was trained by this Ethiopian man, Ethiopian Christian from Ethiopia that trained him. And one of the stories that he talks about is that he wanted to go to, I believe it was either Bermuda or Bahamas. And this is the 1930s. He had no money. And the guy told him just visualize being there and you're there. And then he came back like 7 days later and he was like, it's not working. He was like, I can't talk to you because you're in the Bahamas right now. So you're not here. And he shut the door on him. And then he went back to visualizing. And then I forgot how many months later, his brother sends him the money and bought him a ticket on one of the boats to go over there. And not only that, but he went first class. So he had no money. This is the 1930s. And somehow it happened. Whether he asked his brother for it, I don't know. But it's the manifestation. I feel it's something that we all do consistently, but sometimes it's like, you'll hear that, oh man, why me? Well, this always happens to me. If it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. Like I've heard people say that all the time. It's like, watch what you say, because we're radio antennas, so we're putting things out and we're receiving things consistently. There's always an exchange happening, even if you don't talk to that person next to you. There's an exchange happening with you and nature. That's why they say like go out to nature because you clear out your energy. And energy within your cities always tend to be very like rough and fast and just crashing into each other. Where nature is flowing, and that's not to jump around, but that's something that we always should strive to build it within our own house. And it's something that heavily influenced Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, because they're the main character, Trevor. He meets this tree being named Sequoia, and that's how they live. Like their technology is all plant based, so you can walk by this and you won't even notice it. And I saw this TikTok where the guy was talking about if you ever want to receive information, go up to a tree. The older, the better, because they're all connected by roots, so they share information with each other. And you ask, you put either hug the tree or put your hand on the tree and ask the tree to get information. And I found that mind blowing because I had written about that back in like around before the book came out in 2012. So sometime before that. And I have written about it. And it was just something while I was writing, came up with the idea. And to hear this from a different person, I was like, oh, it must be smoke,
Right. We're all connected. I'm talking about this manifesting, and you have to be super specific on what you want. And if and stay positive. So, I read this book. I wish I had it. I reached out to the author, but he's a doctor. He was teaching medical school and he was teaching at a prestigious university in North Dakota or somewhere in that like Midwest, northern Midwest, Pacific Northwest area. And the kids were like kind of spoiled and not like paying attention like what was happening. And they were also smart and kind of just coasting. And he went through some life issues. I think got divorced and all this stuff. And he's like, you know what? I need to get out of here. I'm going to go to the Bahamas. So he went and got a teaching job at a medical school in the Bahamas. Now, a lot of the kids there, they kind of have like this island mentality, and they're like, well, we're not as good as this Ivy League college. Like, how would we ever do this? So so through some of the studies he was doing, and it was about like your cellular information, and it's how you're programming yourself. So not only are negative thoughts going out into the universe, your cells are negative and only attracting things. So even just saying stuff like on this podcast, I joke a lot about stuff like, sometimes it's like out of my realm when I'm talking about like, hey man, like I'm a moron with this. I'm not a moron, like I'm a relatively smart person, but that's part of like, it plays into the thing of like, hey, the stuff I'm talking about. I don't know if you heard about Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan recently, but that guy is either an absolute genius or like borderline
Are you
mad.
talking about Terrence
Howard.
Yes, I was about to say Terrence McKenna. That's right.
Terrence McKenna, another genius, but also like maybe I'm a little dumb for that too. But I am saying this negative. We'll jump back to Terrence Howard in a minute. But I'm saying these negative things in a joking manner. But my cells don't realize that I'm joking. But my personality and my exterior comments that I'm making do realize that. So it's this double-edged sword, which I realize what I'm doing, and like I need to clean this up in my own life to do this while putting this positive energy out. And everything's living. Your dust might be living, but it's living cells together. They're atoms and things that are living, together that are making this us appear that it's completely solid. So talking to a tree, talking to nature, plants will turn towards the direction of the sun. Plants will move towards positive energy. The water that you put in there, if you sing to it, the plants grow better if you sing to the water, as opposed if you're having an argument with somebody and then pouring the water in there. You'll have more abundance in crops and things like this. It is fascinating, all of this stuff. And so we're talking about the cities and money and, just slips through your hands if you ever have it at all. You can't ground anywhere there. There's no dirt. There's no trees, well, few and far between, but like these inner cities, it's the concrete jungle, right? So like, where are you going to ground yourself to get rid of this dirty energy, this dirty electricity, all the stuff that's flowing into your body to even yourself out, to even have a chance to hope of like, not do I want to win the lottery? Because you say that, you win a dollar scratcher. Now, should you say you want $1 million? Like, I tend to think if you want positive things for yourself, like think I want to live in a better neighborhood. I want to get my kids go to a better school. Now, maybe if you sit here and say, hey, I want to have $34 trillion like Elon Musk, that could happen for you. I tend to believe it has to be for like the greater good for yourself and not just focusing. I really hope I have to do nothing the rest of my life and win the lottery and I'll never have to work again. Like that kind of seems like cheating the system.
Yeah, there was something, that's why I grabbed my notebook, because there was something you mentioned and you just brought up a story that now I can't remember, because there's a few things you mentioned there.
Sorry, I go. Jump in.
No. It's just, your mind is thinking, but anyway, there's jumping in a little bit into Terrence Howard and like, but the things he said just makes complete sense to me. Like when he was saying that black holes are not real, and you don't see that in nature, because when you breathe in, you have to breathe out. When something expands, it has to contract. Like that's just the way nature works. And then he was like, look at a tornado. And that's basically what he believes a black hole is. And I was like, hey, that makes more sense, because that's why they always theorize with white holes. Well, that energy is going in there. It has to come out somewhere. But if I'm not mistaken, they have seen beings like coming out from the black holes, like energy things coming out. So somehow it's releasing that, and it makes sense because it's almost like the garbage disposal of the galaxy. It's cleaning up and making things back to its root, so nature can reuse it, which is what happens on Earth.
Right. So I think the only issue that I've heard from Terrence Howard, and he lost me a little bit, but I kind of get what he was saying, was like the 1 times 1. And he's like, you can never have like 1 times anything. And like, I feel like if you just cut that out of his conversation and stuck to like the bigger math and not even like the more complicated parts, that like that's a lot of people are like, I don't know about this like 1 times 1. Like I kind of understand that concept with them. I really liked, because you breathe in, you have to breathe out, an action and a reaction. And just talking about the harmonics of Earth. And then they were talking about, his thoughts for space travel. And, like you'd never have enough fuel to escape like the the speed of the earth going away if you're trying to go away from it. But if you could, disassociate with the earth and move to this like standing still space on an opposite harmonic resonance of the earth, then it would fly by you and you would find all this stuff out. I was like, man, that's like just fascinating on how you would do that. And I was watching this video popped up, and it was a guy with the tuning fork. So he had like a 53 megahertz tuning fork next to like a 42, and he tapped it, and nothing happened with the 42. Then and there was these like ping pong balls attached to the standstill 42 one, the control one. And then he got a 42 and tapped it next to it. And the 42 started vibrating off of the other one vibrating, and the ping pong balls were flying away from it. And it's like, that is connecting to that. It would be interesting to see. I don't know what the opposite of a 42 is. Is that going to be 24? Is that going to be 84? Is that going to, I'm sorry, 21? Is that going to be 84?
That also kind of proves, like, for example, if you're going to attract like-minded people, right? And especially with a podcast, it's obvious, like you think this certain way. So your guests think on a similar, and you guys, wow, that was just such a great interview because you guys were vibing, because your vibration, your frequencies are in similar pattern. And that's one thing you'll hear a lot of contactees say, that if you bring up your vibration, your frequency high enough, these extraterrestrials will meet you halfway. But if you're operating on very low, like, with a lot of people I grew up with, a lot of them are still stuck in the way they're thinking, back when they were still in their 20s and very focused on the gossip and what's going on in the streets and stuff like that. Very kind of low vibration. Some of them still doing things they shouldn't be doing, just to leave it at that. And I can't be around them anymore because that's not my mentality. Like, I'm trying to move forward. So we're not vibing on the same frequency. So it's like tuning forks. Like you were saying, if I'm operating on the 532, you're operating on what was it, 430?
Yeah, it was something that I don't remember the exact megahertz, what it was.
So let's just say 434. We're not going to really vibe together, and that's why some people like, oh, I can't be around that guy, or, like he's constantly complaining, because we're not on the same frequency. It's not that I'm better than these people, but we're just not living in the same reality. It's
right.
Like,
so with this, the tuning fork and the frequencies, and like what Terrence Howard said, it's almost like if you have the same frequency, you're going to pull that person in. And there's some people, like, oh, hey, I really like Ramon, like being around him, like our conversations. And then, oh, I had Johnny on last week, and our conversation was like I never want to speak to that guy again. Now, was he my opposite frequency? And then there's a lot of people like in between, like, oh, it was okay. It was, give or take, like, that might have been good. But, not so much for podcast guests, but more in your personal, personal life. There's people you have to interact with. You're like, this is the worst. Like, how is this even happening? And I'm forced to deal with this, and I can't walk away. And there's some people who are like, oh, hey, he's over here in the corner. Maybe I'll talk to him. Maybe I won't. So that'd be interesting. I would love if we could measure our frequency somehow. Figure, it's always like, oh, we have to like raise them up. Like, how do you? Like, I know the concepts of how. Like, what's that number? Like, where am I, and where do I have to go to?
Exactly. Like, where am I today? And do I need to like just stay home all day and meditate, or am I good? Yeah, I agree, because I don't think we're always operating on the same frequency depending on what's happening to us,
Right. Just think of the stuff that you did as a kid that like you're ashamed of as you were growing up, or like, hey, maybe I stole some bubble gum from the store, or maybe like I lied to my parents, like things like that. That's low frequency shit. Even cursing, that's low frequency. Like that's just like a filler word. I could have thought something better to say. I think so. So, but if like but communicate properly.
I think with cursing, it depends the emotion you put behind it, because if I say like, oh, like that shit is so amazing, it's not the same as like, oh, that shit, like.
Yeah. But so this goes back to, and that's your opinion. That's great. This kind of also goes back to like, so when I said, I was talking about on the podcast, like, oh, I'm too dumb to understand that. Like my cells don't understand that I'm joking. So I just think there are bad, is that why they call them bad words? Is that why they're called curse words? Is that why they're called, for that? And I use them. So like I'm sitting here, at the bar on Saturday and then church on Sunday right here, saying how great I am. But, and who knows if I ever clean up my sailor language. But I think if you can get rid of that, it does, even with the, positive, that was fucking awesome versus like, that was the most beautiful moment that I had because of this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I think it holds different things. I'm not going to make that change anytime soon, I don't think. But I think if you can, that kind of helps raise your vibration. I just wonder,
Yeah,
like, how close am I to meeting my alien brothers and sisters? Do I just need to meditate for like 10 more minutes today? Or do I need to clean up like half my life until I'm there? So that's why I need to find out where that number is.
yeah. Just to go back really quickly when you were talking about, how you're saying, oh, I'm too dumb to understand that. There was this, I think I must have been like 23 or 24, and I got a job like filming for this DJ. Whenever he had parties, I would film his stuff. And I was, he drove like a Bentley's, and this producer was driving, I forgot what it was, a Lamborghini. Like there was three really expensive cars. And I was packing up my camera and stuff, and I made a joke about being broke. The look on these three guys was, I wish I would have taken a picture, because I was like, oops, because they just had this blank look on them, and they just stared at me like they weren't operating on that, right? And one of them, the two of them for sure, especially one of them, I'm sure I can mention his name, Todd Terry. He's a big DJ, and he's driving a Bentley, but he grew up in Brooklyn. He grew up rough, so his mindset was not there. I'm sure he's familiar with that, but he wasn't allowing my low self-esteem of the way I looked at money to, to manipulate them in any kind of way. They just had a blank look, and I never made a broke joke around them again. And it wasn't until years later that I realized why it affected them that way, why they all just looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I might as well just said it in Chinese, because they had no idea, like that wasn't their frequency.
Right. Maybe in their mind, you were broke because you're broke. Like they're not broke because they've refused to be broke anymore. But that's part of like what
Exactly.
you have to do. You
Because their
see this,
mindset wouldn't allow them to. And
like the
that's why
greatest fighters. Like how is every fighter that you talk to, like, UFC, they have the interviews with them, and every single fighter is like, I'm the greatest fighter. Like
yeah,
all of you aren't the greatest fighter, but like in their mind, they're the greatest fighter ever. And they got there by refusing to believe.
to
Like how
believe
many
anything
times in
else.
your life, if you even talk to a buddy, you're like, hey man, I'm gonna do this. Like, dude, you're moving to Japan. Like, that's the worst fucking idea. Like, do you know anybody there? Do you know Japanese? Like, you're not like, that's
Yep.
not gonna last at all. But you could have accepted that and never went to Japan or had that experience or,
Yeah.
lived out there. But you refused to do that. And then the people just do this on, I think you have to be delusional almost to a point, but like that's
You
also the
do.
positive energy out there.
You
You
do.
know,
You do.
Muhammad Ali
Delusional.
saying he was the greatest, he was the greatest at the time,
Yeah.
but like all these other people aren't.
You definitely have to be delusional. Like Will Smith said it best when he was talking about, being delusional and being realistic. And he was like, 100 years ago, electricity wasn't realistic. You know, us having AI is not realistic. If I went back even 50 years and talked about the smartphone, I might get slapped. But, this crazy guy, what are you talking about? But those are things that are real now, but that weren't realistic or even impossible. Like the speed, all these scientists were giving these things about why a man can't run a 4 minute mile. And now that is like, if you can't even do that, don't even bother coming to the race. That's the bare minimum. Like we got high school students that are doing that. So if you can't even do that, don't even stay home, you know, kind of mentality. So the way you look at yourself and the way that mirrors off everything else. So the and a lot of people have a really, with men, it tends to be women, they tend to show that side of them way more. Men tend to keep all that within, but it's still, we're still looking at ourselves in a bad way. Like, a man always has to show the strength, but inside how he looks at himself, or I look at myself, really it's the most important thing, because that is the foundation of whether or not I can achieve these goals. You know,
You need to be
for
balanced.
yeah.
So the
So
masculine and the feminine energy have to be there at the same time, whatever that is. And I didn't grow up, in the crack neighborhood you're saying, but even like in a typical middle class neighborhood, like you don't show your feelings. You're tough. You don't, oh, you cried. What do you like? You're a pussy, man. Like rub some
yeah,
dirt on it. Let's go. You know, I'm sure like it just gets worse depending on, you know, socioeconomic places where you're going where the living is harder. And people build that shell up on themselves. And then, does this, is this part of, is that kind of like a generational trauma then? Because you can never balance it to get yourself out of there. You know,
Yeah.
even when you reach 20, it's like, okay, well, good thing I didn't get shot. I didn't get locked up. I sold drugs for a bit, or like whatever it might have, stupid shit it might have been. But you're just stuck in that negative then.
Yeah.
You know, I don't take that for
But it's like talking to balance with men, there's a certain, like, we're both dads. So I see the importance it is for a man to be there because, yes, you treat your partner as the equal, but we're not equal because me and you can never give birth. My wife or your wife can never, what's the word without getting too dirty?
they
Not
can't be
perform.
standing up.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have
So
that over them
just
forever.
certain things.
Right.
So
There's men things that are guaranteed men things. There are women things
yeah,
that are guaranteed women things.
but where I'm getting at is for example, like I'm not gonna sit here and complain how terrible my life is because that's not helping anybody, right? And then I'm passing that energy off and that mentality, a mindset to my son. So in a certain way, a man does have to like rub dirt on it and move on. That doesn't mean that you don't have a moment where you just like sit down and cry because that's also normal too. Especially like if you're grieving or you're just having a tough day, that's a release. Excuse me one second.
Yep.
So the importance of, I agree with a lot of these masculine motivational speakers to a certain degree where there's certain things it's very man and there's other things that is very woman. Like the man is the protector. No matter how much a woman trains, yeah, there are definitely plenty of women that could kick my butt. But to be matched up to the same level, not to make this a female versus male kind of thing. I'm just getting to the point that the man is the protector. The woman is
There's
the
bone
nurturer.
density, there's muscle growth, there's testosterone, there's all these things
Yeah.
that cannot be matched on a natural level, just genetically.
Yeah. So going back to raising children, like, you know, when I tell my son like, hey, don't do that, and then if my son has a boo-boo, that's where my wife takes over, right? And not saying that I don't have that side, and not saying that she doesn't have that protective side. But, and that's where the balance comes off, but also knowing that we have our place, and then together we fit in, then we balance, right?
Right. I,
So
I think to have a well-rounded child, and there's kids who definitely in single family homes or, a father left, a mother left, or a tragedy happened, that they've turned out to be, okay children. But I guess we, are talking about, both fathers, but, both husbands, that you approach the children differently. There's motherly qualities, there's fatherly
yeah,
qualities. And then if you want your child, even, I have a son and a daughter, so I treat them differently for how they are. And, and I feel like my wife does too. We treat them as individuals, but there's things that like for my son that I need him to like catch up on a little quicker than like I might for my daughter, even just different like age based,
yeah,
things. And, part of that is like just to get through life and all this stuff. But, I feel like maybe when we were growing up with our parents or our grandparents, if the kid had a skin knee, the dad was like, what are you talking about, man? Like I lost a finger at the factory today. Like nobody cares about your
yeah.
skin knee, but here it's like, oh, come down, sit down. I'll talk about like, okay, what happened? Oh, you tripped, you did this. And like, you're more present and aware there for them. But it is two parts to make that whole, that balance of it.
Yeah, but there is a quality to at the same like they did exaggerate, to a certain degree that generation, but at the same time, when you're going through a tough time, only you can get yourself back up. No matter what I say to you or your wife or your mom or your dad says to you, unless you decide to get back up and go back at it, you know, it's not going to happen. That's a personal decision we all make. So sometimes when life punches you in the face and you get knocked down and you see the blood, and it's like, why you do this to me, God? Like, how long are you going to stay down there? And I know we shifted from one thing, but I think it all extends from the same thing because how we looking at ourselves and we're like, okay, I fell down, I failed. Let me get back up and try again. Okay, I failed again. Let me continue trying until I get it. And I think that's the same way I'm looking at bringing it all back. I'm looking at manifesting like I'm not getting but I'm still continue to look at life in a positive way, try to visualize my life in a different circumstance. And I personally feel like for me personally, vibrationally or frequency wise, I'm not matching that RM Almonte, who's a, a famous author. I'm not, my frequency is not there yet.
That's why we need
So
the
I
frequency
have to catch
tracker to
up to
find
that
out if
guy.
you need 10 more minutes of manifestation to get there. But no, I completely agree with you for, I would love for this to be a full-time thing. I would love for this, to be my main source of income. And it's your dedication to it. And like, yeah, has life punched me even just with this, like, I didn't think I'd, have Joe Rogan money coming in, but I was like, oh, like, I didn't think $1,000 a month or, $2 or $5 grand, after putting like all this hard work into it and how much time, I was like, oh, that should be like relatively easy. Guess what, man? That's not relatively easy, but like I have to. So earlier too, we also talked about before we started recording about TikTok and these other social media ways of how you can grow your audience. So as I'm sitting here saying I don't have Joe Rogan numbers, I'm also not doing my 100% that I need to be doing. Like I'm not
Exactly.
on TikTok. I'm not doing. I've every interview here, I have videos of us, of everyone else I've ever recorded. 60, 70 episodes now, whatever, recorded videos, everything. What have I done with the video? Not one thing. It is sitting in a file, waiting for me to clip it, waiting for me to put it on Instagram, waiting for me to put it
Exactly.
onto, TikTok and things that like I know I should do, but it's also tough to balance that like real life Brian versus the podcaster Brian, and the real life one, wife, kids, full time job, things like
I
this.
heard a quote from Cody Sanchez, and this really rounded up. An amateur wishes they can something. I'm not gonna say word for word, but an amateur wishes they can do this full time. A pro learns to love whatever it takes to do it. And I was like, oh crap, that like hit the spot because, like you, Brian, there's definitely I know I'm not doing 100%. Yes, I'm writing every day and yes, I'm on TikTok, but there's so much more I could be doing to get out there. And, I think a lot of people start worrying about burnout way too soon. If you're not hitting your 100%, don't even worry about burnout. Like people start worrying about burnout when they're just not even, they haven't even started yet. That's like, dude, you're not even close to burnout. Like,
Just in your regular life, just figure out how much you have to operate just to get things done. And
no.
you can't, you're not even burned out of that yet. So now your side hustle that you're trying to get to a full-time gig, like that's going to take a lot more than like I think
But
where
I
most
think
of us
even
are
that
at.
mentality is a ceiling that you're putting over your head. You're lowering the ceiling to top you right on the head, and you're thinking about burnout. It's like no, you're full of energy. You can do this. I think every single person on this planet that is alive today, when you shift your mindset, you can do whatever your heart desires. Like there's I remember I forgot who it was, but there was one guy who was saying that, you know, the way these younger kids, and it's really like starting with our generation and down, if you're in your 40s and down, that, we were told like you could do whatever you want. And then he was saying that that's not true. And I'm like, well, not exactly, because you can do whatever you want, but it takes a lot of work. This is not, you know, there's things that's manifesting, but you need to drive there, right? I'm not gonna manifest a job by not applying to any jobs. Like opportunity is not gonna literally come to your door and knock, and not only knock, but force it open and drag you out. That's not what's gonna happen. Like you need to put your own energy into it. So creating your reality has has become so important. And going back to what I was saying about you could do what you want, but you have to remember that you have to put the effort in. You have to put the dedication. You have to be doing this every day. You want to write a book, then you need to write every day. That book is not going to manifest itself, at least not yet. Maybe later in the future when we get better at manifesting things, we can just manifest, the manuscript, because our mind is that quick that I don't like. I try never to put ceilings on everything, but at the same time, I know I have to sit down and write. I know I have to jump on TikTok and promote it. But the thing is, every time I do those little things, like we don't know who might listen to this podcast. and all of a sudden your video goes viral, you know, this podcast goes viral, and all of a sudden you have 1 million listeners overnight. That's not impossible. That's completely possible.
Right.
Just like, yeah, go ahead.
I think with a busy life, you need to and this is something that I struggle with, is that when even like around the house, like if I write down like, oh, I had to fix the bathroom sink the other day, I had to fix the kids' bathroom, and I had to do stuff with the lawn. And this stuff has like been dragging on now for 2, 3, 4 weeks where I'm like, oh no, like tomorrow I made a list, and over the holiday weekend, I knocked all that out. But because I had a list. So I think if you can schedule your day, because everyone's busy, you know, so like, oh, I have to write today, and I have to go on TikTok, and I have to do 20 minutes of this, and I have to do 30 minutes. It's easy to get to 10 o'clock at night and be like, man, I didn't write one word. I doom scrolled on TikTok. I didn't do one productive thing for myself. You know, I was listening to the latest Alien hearing or whatever, or Alien interview, like whatever it might be. And so for me, I think what I need to start doing, one, I bought a whiteboard, a little portable like whiteboard.
I have one too, yeah.
That I need to write like daily manifestations. Like I need to write like mantras on there or whatever, you know, like you can do it, you can, like whatever it might be that's like stupid. But you hear these people and me saying it's stupid is like, that's me like, limiting myself. But Matthew McConaughey was like, he talked about this stuff. He's like, dude, I create a checklist, and like I have 50 things on my checklist. And he's like, first thing every day on the checklist is wake up. He's like, set yourself up for success. You don't want to put your first thing that you're going to do to be that hard where you're never going to get to it. He's like, I put wake up, I put kiss my wife, and I take that I'm going to go to the bathroom. And he's like, 1, 2, 3. He's like, I got those done in the first minute of my day, setting myself up on success, and I'm going to build on that. You hear Conor McGregor, you know, the book, the movie, The Secret. Yeah, Conor McGregor, the fighter. The book, the movie, The Secret, the manifestation, like, you know, the gift, the present, all these things are kind of the same thought. That I do think they work, but I think they also simplify it a lot. But Conor McGregor, there was this, you know, documentary, whatever show on him, and he was talking about that, you know, he would talk about, I'm the greatest fighter, but he was believing it. And he's like, oh, and I read The Secret, and like I would, every time I went to the mall or the supermarket, like I'm getting a front row spot. There's a spot open. I'm pulling up. There's a front row spot. And he's like, it happens to me all the time. And there's things like this that you can do, and it's just building on the success. So if you're going to sit here, if I focus on, I'm getting 1 million subscribers today, I'm getting 1 million subscribers. Am I going to get it? I mean, hey, I put the work in, I put the manifestation, but build those goals. Like today, I'm getting 10 new subscribers. Tomorrow, end of the week, I'm going to have 50. At the end of the month, I'm going to have 300. You know, put these achievable, you know, goals should be like SMART or SMAC, specific, measurable, actionable, you know, realistic, and or attainable.
I don't think they should be realistic. I don't think they should be realistic.
But if you're going to go to the moon, you're like, hey, I want to be an astronaut. Like, well, how realistic is that? But to say that you are an author, and to say I'm going to sell 1 million books, and to say I'm going to have an interview on whatever news station you want, those can be realistic, while this second right now may be a reach.
But for example, like if I say I want to go to the moon and I want to be an astronaut, if I truly, really believe that and really going for it, I believe I can do it. But if I just say it and don't put any energy towards it, you know, then, you know, if I'm not building that fire, then it's not going that way at all. Then
I understand that. I think they should do a lot of this in grade school and high school for kids. Like we used to have career day, well, like once a year, like the end of the year in like high school, we'd have, you know, kind of like this fun day outside, and you go around, and they would have like this reformed drug addicts would come in and tell you to stay off drugs, and these horrible things would happen to them. Then they'd have like a police officer come in and talk about their job, a nurse, and like maybe they have a lawyer or somebody. And so we're talking about, you know, the goals that you want and like the things you want to achieve. Like I want to do French, and you can have anything if you want it, right? But it's a shame that a lot of people, like, they get into social work because they want to help, but they don't get paid shit in social work. So it's like, why did you go to a school to be $300,000 in debt to get paid at a job that's $30,000, and you operate this youth center that is just based
more
on
than as a bartender? Yeah,
right. So this is like the hard part of like, achieve another goal first and save that as like a volunteer opportunity. Oh, I want to teach. I want a job in like French literature during prisoners of war. It's like, that's not, like, you just made something up. But a college will have a degree for you that you're not going to get shit for, unless you sit here and go like, I'm willing to move anywhere in the world. Like, no, I'm going to move within 10 miles of my city. I'm going to have my same friends. I'm going to visit my parents on the weekends. But so I guess a ceiling or limiting yourself. I would like to see. So at this age, neither of us are probably going to be astronauts unless they make some exceptions for us. But a kid in high school could be an astronaut. And what is that path for you? I wouldn't know the first place to become an astronaut. I guess you can Google now and find that out. But it'd be nice if a lot of times in high school, they just had people all the time coming through like, hey, do you like your current life? Do you like the life that your parents provide for you? Do you like the house that you live in? Well, you guys go on vacation once or twice a year, things, whatever it might be. Like, okay, well, that's X number of dollars. So whatever job you want, find something you enjoy. So it's like not a job, and then work on your side hustle so you can, escape this rat race. But unfortunately, it seems like you have to participate in it for some amount of time. I just think we set people up on the wrong foot by not teaching them this manifestation, by not teaching them to go get this goal. But hey, you can do anything you want. Like, no, you can't really do anything you want. It has to be realistic.
I don't know if
it's a fine line. I feel like I'm,
because, for example, like going back to the astronaut thing, I applied to be I forgot what it was called. It was this rich Japanese guy. I can't remember his name. He owns like this huge company, a clothing company in Japan, and he rented one of the Elon Musk rockets. And whenever they start doing tours around the moon, he's taking 7 different kinds of people, and one of them is a YouTuber who he basically trained himself on rocket science, and he became like, so people go to him when they're talking about the science of rockets and stuff like that, and he has no background in that, and he got chosen to be one of the astronauts. If you look at the 4, like, I think nowadays to even say that, it's actually, the older we get, the easier it is becoming to become an astronaut. And I applied to that. I also applied. Every time NASA opens up, I apply. Is it going to happen? The chances, I don't know, but I put myself out there. Now, if the way I want to become an author, if I really want to become an astronaut, it's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to take a lot of failures, and it's going to take a lot of, but I believe I definitely could do it if that's what I really want to do. And that's where I'm setting my full potential. Like, never limit what your age or how much potential, for example, like I remember a lot of kids, I never liked basketball, but a lot of kids I grew up with, they all want to be pros, but they weren't doing the things that pros did before they became pros. If you listen to the stories of Michael Jordan, remember, he got cut from his high school. So if I compared him to a lot of those guys, you would say, like, he ain't gonna make it. What did he do? He was out there practicing every single day. The same way, what's the name of the famous basketball player that passed away, that died in the helicopter accident?
Kobe Bryant. Yep.
So that's another example that he wasn't that good, and then he was practicing every day. So my point, getting back to it, is like, you want to have 1 million subscribers for your podcast. I want to sell lots of books. We need to put that same kind of Kobe Bryant effort into whatever your goals are. If you're not doing that, you're not going to manifest it, because you're not putting the energy, and you're not reaching for those higher frequencies. You're not becoming that person. And in order for us to grow, we have to push through the dirt like a tree roots do, and not only growing down, but growing up, growing sideways like a tree. So you have to see yourself in that kind of mindset that you're growing in all directions, becoming more rooted, but also reaching out to that woo-woo kind of world at the same time.
I do agree with that. And, one of the things that I am trying to overcome is like a self-doubt type of thing.
Yeah.
These self-limiting beliefs. And, the age for the astronaut. But then like William Shatner went on the Jeff Bezos's dick machine and went up to, hey, he wouldn't design it, not me. I mean, whatever. It is what it is. But, William Shatner, 95 years old, just became an astronaut. So, there you go. And I do like, you're talking about the YouTuber. And this kind of goes back to Terrence Howard too. Like, well, who's Terrence Howard to sit here and say these ideas? He's not from this prestigious institution who's dedicated his whole life. Like, no, you're self-limiting in your box of, you can't violate the grants that are going to come in, the federal grants, for thinking too far outside the box, for thinking that a car can run on water. You're like, but that's impossible. It needs gasoline. It needs something else, or Elon Musk even like, hey, we're going to electric car, whatever, that guy's manifested amazing stuff for himself. But, you do these self-doubting beliefs that a lot of, I think, institutions, like this Graham Hancock thing of archaeology, this Randall Carlson thing of how quickly maybe the Niagara Falls formed, and even like the Colorado River carving out the Grand Canyon and things like this. You can't think that far outside the box if you're stuck within the institution. This guy's like, my passion is rocket science. I'm going to watch YouTube videos. I'm going to go read books. I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to do whatever he did to become that. And to be the sought out resource, that's amazing for him. I think we need more of that. I think we're in a time where more of that is happening.
It actually even becomes easier. This is the same reason. We'll get more into the woo-woo stuff, but this is the same reason why Google, Tesla, SpaceX, a bunch of these tech companies no longer care whether you have a VA or not, because you're not bringing anything to the table, because they're not teaching you how to critically think.
Right. A lot of the schools like sit there, listen, regurgitate the facts that I told you specifically. I used to love in college when the professor would be like, actually, I wrote my own book. And it's like, just because they want you to spend, the $15, $20 for them to write it. And then, their test is, whatever they found useful. But like we could both have a history degree from the same school, depending who your professor was, and end up with completely different knowledge.
Yeah. So growing, the importance of your self-education is the most important thing. Like the amount of books you read, it really makes a difference. Like the amount of books you read, when you talk about these self-made billionaires and self-made millionaires, you ask them how many books they read a year, and then you ask the guy who's struggling, barely, paying rent, working a crappy job, how many books he reads. There's a huge difference. Anywhere from 50 to 60 books per year versus, I think I read one article in the newspaper, last week, and then that's it. There's a huge difference. And I remember I've said that because, of course, I'm a writer, so I definitely believe in reading. When I say that to people, their eyes glaze over. Like, I'm just shocked. Like, wow.
Reading's boring. There's a new Netflix series. I have to keep up with the Kardashians. Like,
Who
there's reality
reads?
TV.
Like, I've heard people say, who reads books? Like, that stuff is going out. And I was like, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. But hey, don't read then. Just do books on tape. You need new knowledge coming in to form you as an interesting person.
Even audiobooks is absolutely like, I love audiobooks for that reason, because I go through so many books. But I mean, all these things we're talking about is just the self-belief and how we look at ourself, and how you look at yourself is way more important than, because if how I look at myself and how I treat myself is how other people are going to treat me and how other people are going to talk to me. And I'm always surprised in myself when people are like, wow, you wrote 4 books? I can't do that. And I'm just like, to me, that's not a big deal. It's not I have 4 books, and then I have 2 that are being edited. It's not a big deal. I'm looking at myself like, and this is a bad habit, comparing yourself to someone above you, and like, well, they wrote 10 and half the time I wrote 4. I'm the lazy bum over here. And then people, that read a book are like, are you kidding? You're amazing. And I'm just like, no, I feel like a bum. But you see what I mean? Even though I think writing 4 books is the percentage of the human population that will do that or has done that is very, very slim. I'm still not seeing that as for what it is. And even though I'm saying it now, I still don't see it as for what it is. And that's one of the things also that you also have to take a look at the amazing things you've done. Like how many podcasts do you have now under your belt?
70.
Okay. How many people? I saw the numbers of, I forgot, it was like less than 1% of the people who start podcasts even get to 21 episodes.
Yeah, I don't know what that number is, but there is a podcast that I listen to that, like, I feel like I get in different things, but they also have like, hey, if you have any experiences, reach out about like weird stuff, like reach out. And this guy was like, I need to have a podcast every day for 3 years. Not every day. I had to release a podcast weekly for 3 years. And then if I couldn't do it, then I would consider that, maybe this wasn't, the ship for me. You need to be consistent. It's hard, it's hard to write. It's hard to sit down and find that time. It's hard to have coherent thoughts. I think all of us
to find a guest every week, and
right. Yeah. For this, and to have this going for those people who just give up, like, yeah, it's hard. And a lot of people, if I talk to other podcasters, they're like, you edit, like you do this stuff, you like put that effort into it. And I was like, yeah, like, I want to sound polished, you know, like we coughed a couple of times through here. People will never hear that. They'll be completely cut out of this. But, you know, so I edit on here and, you know, to put like that love and care to put out a finished product. Like you didn't just release your first draft with, you know, spelling errors or, you know, a cross out and everything and just like upload it. Like it does take effort.
Handwritten on tissue paper.
Like, oh, that was an idea I had at 4 o'clock in the morning. I threw it down. But I do think that all of us are creative beings. And like, I do think that's kind of our main purpose here is to create and become interesting and to talk. And unfortunately, the daily life, like you say, you read one newspaper article like this year or this week, whatever it was. Like, I feel like that type of stuff is to lower your energy. Like there's never anything good. There's never anything that you can change. And if you don't like what's happening in the Middle East or you don't like the Russia-Ukraine, well, guess what? You don't get to decide what happens with your money that's being given by the US government, like to them. And even if you don't support that or you want like the other side instead of like whatever side it is, but I feel that's just like to lower you, to get you stuck into a muck and then like kind of rub your face in it of it. And I think if we all that you can't reach in, it's like put the ceiling on you and like how do I have time to write when the government's got their boot on my neck? And it's like, all right, like fine, it's music, it's singing, it's dance, it's drawing, whatever it might be. I think we all have that, and it's hard to tap into that when you're stuck into the low vibrational muck.
Yeah, and I think it's the limitation that you're one person that you can't make a change. Listen, there's a lot of one persons, but they've all had really tough. You know, like how long has Nelson Mandela been dead? Not including the Mandela effect. That's
I think 2013. I think other people might say the 80s. I think 2013.
Yeah,
in my timeline.
And in our timeline, but we're people still talk about him. People still amazed by him. He spent 30 years in jail for his belief systems. I think the majority of us wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? And to do what he did, he was just one person. You know, if you look at any of these people who've done amazing things, they're just one person, and we still talk about them. You know, like if you think of, oh God, one of the founding fathers was also a big inventor.
Benjamin Franklin?
Yes, Benjamin Franklin. Like I was thinking about him the other day. I was like, this guy is amazing. He was like a politician, an ambassador, an inventor. I mean, just doing any of those things full time takes too much time. You don't have enough time. Yeah, he was doing like 2 and 3 of them.
And then sailing back and forth to England and back, and like he was like the prime negotiator with them till it all fell apart. And it's like that's like I don't know how long it took, like a month to get over there, then a month to get back, and you know, like
just and he was inventing on the side too. Like
that guy.
And we're still talking about him 300 years. Well, how many?
Yeah,
300.
1776. So you know, we're 250 or so.
Yeah, 250, and we're still talking about him. You know what I mean? Like, so to limit yourself to the point is, you could say like, oh, that person is special or they're born special. No, I don't think like a person who's really smart. I don't think that comes from, you know, genetics or God said, I like this guy and the rest of you go fuck yourself. You know, like, I don't think that's how it works. I think it's when you put that dedication, you're putting that brain power, that energy towards whatever it is, and you will get better at stuff. Like, you know, I said this at the last podcast. I didn't learn to blind touch till I was like 45. I taught myself how to, you know, blind touch, for those of you who don't understand, is you're typing without looking at the keyboard. I didn't learn to do that till I was 45. You know what I mean? So and I've been, right now, I started teaching myself Portuguese, and I would hear like Brazilians tell me like, oh, Portuguese is so difficult. I'm like, more difficult than any other language. Now, if you sat here and told me, yo, I'm going to try to learn dolphin, I'm going to say, wow, that's a whole, while we're going, I'm not going to say it's impossible. We're going into a whole different kind of, forget about unbeaten path, but to learn another language that other humans talk, yeah, you might mispronounce it, but so what? You know, don't ever limit what you can do. If you really want to learn dolphin, I'm sure you can.
So I think this goes with like the self-doubt and the self-belief of like, is learning Portuguese, like I don't know Spanish, I don't know French, I don't know any of these languages. Like they all have to be equally difficult to learn. Or on the flip side, each of them is equally easy to learn if I dedicate my time to it. But it's like recognizing what the goal is at hand. Like, oh, learning Japanese is hard as anything, man. I'm not going to do that. Or, oh, Chinese, they have, 7,000 words and characters and all this stuff, and their alphabet's endless, and a symbol also is a word while also meaning a letter and all these things. And,
Yeah, exactly.
oh, Japanese, right to left. I'll never be able to do this. Of course you won't be able to do it because you've already told yourself you can't do it.
Yeah.
But if I want to focus on, I want to learn Japanese. I'm not going to learn it today. I'm not going to learn it tomorrow. But if I put in the good habits, if I put in the training that I need to, I will learn Japanese in no time. I was trying to explain to my son, he's 10 years old, and he was telling me like how long his life has already been already. And he's like, man, like, I have all these memories, and, like I remember back to when I was 3, and it's just been like so long. And I understood what he was saying. And I was like, Bud, like, I get it, man. I was like, but, from like, I remember when, you and your sister weren't here at all. It was just me and mom. Like, I remember back then, and like, we would just go out and do whatever we wanted. I was like, and then I remember the day that you were born. And like, I remember all this stuff. And like, it wasn't that long ago. Like, everything flies by so fast.
It's different.
But,
yeah.
Right. But, there's this saying, like, the days are long, but the years are short, like some stupid Hallmark saying. But it's like completely true of like, oh, I want to go get a law degree. Oh, that's 3 years of my life. That's so long. I'll never do it. I'll never do it. Well, when that thought first entered my mind, I was 30. I'm 42, 40, 40 something right now, 43. And I could have had that 10 years ago. And now I'm like, oh, if I do it now, and, my work has tuition reimbursement. By the time I pay them back, I finish and I pay them back in the years that I owe them. Like, I'll be 50. Like, it's just these self-doubting things that if you just did it the first, it's not, well, none of this stuff is long.
Takes that long. Yeah.
Right. In your mind, it is like 365 days. Yeah, go ahead.
The time's going to fly by regardless. And, that saying where they say, if you go to the cemetery, that is the richest place on earth, because that's all that should have, would have, could have,
all those ideas that just never, come to fruition. Or you're talking about the Revolutionary War and like how hard like things are, the founding fathers. It's like 1% of the United States population, the colony population, decided to fight for the revolution. The other 99% were like, we don't really care one way or the other. Like, if they still rule us and we pay them, like, okay, we have to pay taxes on teas, or if you guys take over, like, that's fine by us too. But like, I've got stuff to do every day. Like, 1% of the people rose up to say, like, this is nonsense. We're not doing this. So that kind of goes against my point where I was like, hey, like, I might not like what's happening in the Middle East or which side it's being funded, or, it's all the stuff that I have no idea about, because you just get whatever spin they want to feed you. But like, hey, a small portion of people can rise up and be like, hey, this is over. Like, we're not going that route anymore.
Yeah. And it's to realize that you are the creator of your life. It's not life is imposing its own, like, well, today we're gonna slap you with a, we're gonna put my foot up against your face and nothing you can do. It's like, no, that's not true. Like, you're gonna create your own reality, your own mindset, your own way of thinking. If you don't do that, somebody will create it for you. And then that's what we're feeling, because we've allowed somebody else to create it, because we didn't even know that we could do that. And that's the best thing. Like, let me not even show you what your superpowers are. And I already defeated you. So there's nothing to fight, because you defeat yourself. It's like life has all these hard things, and like Will Smith says, and then you're going to turn around and kick yourself in the balls.
Right. I think your self attitude, and then also like, oh, I hate going to work, and I know traffic's terrible, and like when I get in there, my boss is always kind of like a dick to me. But if you already know all these things, you should prepare a game plan on how to combat that. Like, oh, if I leave 10 minutes earlier for work, maybe traffic isn't as bad. Or if it is, I still get there when I need to. My boss is
going back to what I was saying earlier, where like you're feeling like, wow, like I did that the other day and I was so amazed. So there was this sorry to cut you off. There was this contest about short stories, right? And it was to write 1,000 words, and we weren't allowed to pick the category. I write sci-fi. I could write metaphysical, no problem. So the category was random. All of a sudden, I get 2 categories put together, and it was crime, Western. I'm not big into Westerns. I'm not big into reading crime books. And I'm just like, wow, that's out of my comfort zone, completely out of my comfort zone. So what I did was I sat there and I was like, wow, congratulations, Ramon, you won. I can't believe you won. I didn't win, but what I did do was I impressed myself that I wrote the story, and I was just so impressed with it. Now there were other things that I made mistakes with it. It's like grammar and stuff like that, but I didn't care about that. The important thing was that I saw in my mind, and when I wrote it down, not only did I write westerns, I started listening to famous country singer, kind of very like man's man.
Johnny Cash or
Yes, Johnny Cash.
yep, there
So
you
I
go, the Man in
listened to
Black.
I listened to, I was listening to all of Johnny Cash's music, just as, like music about prison and singing the car, like those famous songs, and the one about hell. And, and I was able to write so easy. It's like I've always written Westerns, you know, and that's not my thing. I'm not into that at all. But the point was that I set up my mindset for success because in my mind, I already wrote a winning short story. So,
And I think that you could have
and I,
just dwelled on like, this isn't me, this isn't my thing. I'm not even going to submit it. You know, your
I'm
wife's
not
like, hey,
even gonna
Ramon, how'd the story
bother.
go? Like, nah, yeah, you know what? They said, I didn't even get chosen. Don't even worry. You could have set up all these roadblocks.
Exactly. And
Now, are you going to go
I
start
was,
this country crime series? Hey, maybe you will. I don't know. You might,
yeah.
but it doesn't have to be your wheelhouse for that to be your bread and butter. That as I'm just like re-saying the
But
same
what
phrases.
I'm saying is like a lot of times we'll put all this baggage in the front of our car before we even start driving. And then we wonder why we can't see in front of us. And the point was to clear that path and I'm already there. I already succeeded. Like this is already done. I just need my reality to catch up to where I'm at already. And then I did it. When I saw that I did it that way, then I started doing that more and more every time I sit down to write. I'm like, wow, you like I tell myself, or I picture, somebody else telling me like, wow, I can't believe you wrote 2,000 words today. That's amazing, man. I wish I could do that. And then already like I hyped myself up and I already wrote the 2,000 words. I just need my reality to catch up again. So my point I'm trying to tell everybody out there in the audience is when you're going about to do something that you start like, man, I hate doing this. It's so difficult. It's such a pain in the ass. Oh my God, it's not productive. Instead of telling yourself that, say like, wow, I can't believe you did such a great job cutting grass. And really quickly, when you said that earlier about kind of changing subjects, when you were talking about, all the stuff you had to do at home or the chores you had to do at home, I heard a lot of people talk about this where what is the value of you doing that versus you paying somebody to do that? So meaning let's say it took us an hour to cut the grass, right? What can you done in that hour that might have made you more money versus the money you saved cutting the grass? So basically saying how much is your time worth and the price that you put on it and the importance of you putting a price on your time. Because remember, money is not limited. Time is limited as far as in this physical sense of our physical body. How long we have here is limited. That is the most expensive resource you have because, we both have young children. If you missed that first walk, you're not getting that back. If you missed those first words, you're not getting that back. You missed that childhood of your child, that's gone, done. You're not getting that back. There's no amount of money, no amount of anything to return that. So going back to what I was talking about is what is your time worth? So to me, the time I spend with my son is priceless, right? That is the most expensive thing. And then underneath that will be the time spent with my mom. Then after that would be, the rest of the family. Underneath that is my career. So if I spend this hour writing on my book, how much is that worth versus me doing my laundry? Or if I'm at that point, paying somebody to do my laundry.
Right. So I've heard the same thoughts, and I think a lot of that. So we talked earlier about when I first started working 505 an hour, and then like we just did like, hey, you worked 5 nights a week after school from 6 to 11 every night, and then you got your paycheck and getting
Mhm.
$60 or $70. Like I never once was like, that is work. Like that was bullshit, man. Like my 30 hours is so much more valuable, or whatever hours it
Yeah,
was so much more valuable than that. And then with your kids, it is priceless. Like if you miss like the first words, the talk, or like, oh, I want to hang out with you, and you're like, oh, hey, let me just finish up this video I'm watching, or let me just finish up, or I have to do the dishes, or like, let me just finish loading the dishwasher. Like, is that stuff you could have done later? Like now my son, he's at the age, hey, dad, you want to play basketball? And he knows like that's my sweet spot. I'm like, yeah, man, I'll go shoot around. Let's go outside and play. And he knows I'll drop almost anything to go do that. But for the lawn, like, yeah, it's probably better for me to hire someone to do the lawn. But my kids are also at the age when they're together, they like to butt heads. So it's also my like, hey, you guys go butt heads over here. I'm going to go breathe in some nature and sneeze a lot as I cut these weeds and grass.
yeah,
It is tough. A lot of those podcasts, when I hear that though, it makes you, it almost like, it's almost like, what was I put like handle? What's that called? Like not like farm labor, but like manual labor types of jobs, right? Are these things,
exactly.
you know, like this helper
Versus
community
communication
labor.
jobs.
Right. But they're almost like, I feel like they're in cahoots with like big manual labor helpers because they're like Ramon, like you wouldn't pay somebody $12 to do your laundry versus you just taking 3 minutes to throw it. Like that 3 minutes you could have, it's like, no, like I get that. Like I can't spend my whole day scrolling through Twitter. I get my time is more valuable doing nonsense things. Next thing you know, your entire paycheck is being given out to people to do chores at your house that you could have done. You're like, oh, like where?
Well, it depends because we're not at that level. But if I'm, let's say you hit that level where you're, let's say you're at 500,000 viewers, right? And you're trying to do laundry when you should be looking for the new next podcast. Now, how much is that worth? You know, like if you think about in that hour, you could have been doing this versus doing laundry, you balance out. So it's, right now where we're at, it's cheaper for me to do my own laundry than to pay somebody. But once things start taking off, you have to start quitting. Like I hear the more you level up, the more you have to quit things and pass it on. That's the same like if you start your own company. For example, like you get to a certain level, should you be still editing or should you hire an editor at that point? But
Right. Your time at that point is definitely more valuable as you have things
exactly.
coming in. And that's
And
why
going back, oh, I'm
I would
sorry.
say for now, I just enjoy the checklist. So I know what I have for the entire day.
Yeah.
And then you can like assign value to like, I'm going to put an hour of podcast research in here, every day that I'm going to, it's either me looking for a guest or me following up with a guest or, me promoting my latest episode. Like I'm going to put that in here. I can check that off knowing that, hey, I'm going to spend an hour with my wife. I'm going to spend an hour with my kids. I'm going to spend an hour doing whatever it might be. And you can check that off instead of having no organization, which I had prior to
Yeah.
this weekend for the house projects, and be like, oh, let's do that tomorrow. Oh, I'll get that tomorrow. Like, oh, I'll go to Home Depot tonight. And like, no, that ever happens.
Yeah. One of the examples that I give myself with that is when I first published my first book, Scratching the Cosmic Conscience, I did everything myself, including the editing. And I'm not graphic designer. I'm not that good at editing. And how much more expensive was it for me to do it myself versus to hire somebody to do it? Now, if you look at this version, people always tell me how great the books look, the cover, and how eye-catching they are, versus no one ever said that when I did it myself. So that's a great example of how much is it worth versus, it might be more expensive if you do it yourself because if that's, I'm not going to dedicate my life to getting good at, creating covers, or I'm not going to dedicate my life to becoming a really good editor. I'd rather dedicate my life on creating stories and then hire you that you're a great editor, and pay you what you're worth, because
Right. There's definitely value in that as a product that you're trying to push out,
exactly.
and I think
So
sometimes get caught. I'm sorry. I think sometimes people get caught up. So I've talked to a couple other podcasters and, like my studio is just my living room right here. And I could probably turn to a different corner and put up some like books or like an alien picture and like,
yeah,
whatever else it might be. And maybe in the future I will do that. Right now, I'm not doing that. I've talked to some podcasters who were on the same level and their studio looks amazing. As I'm talking to them, they're like, oh, I spent $10,000 on all this equipment. It's like, all right, I'm looking at your ratings. I'm looking at like your YouTube and like, we're really the same. So I'm not
yeah,
too sure like where you're dumping, like the, the visual of the video comes off better, but it also seems like you're dumping a ton of money into something Now, is that part of manifestation? Is that part of, like you should work on a quality product first and then, or yeah, I guess depends on your means or whatever. Kind of get what I'm saying? Like you wrote a
Yeah,
quality book and then you did stuff on your own because this was your first venture into it. And then as you saw success or value in that and be like, oh, like I understand my lane, I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to get people who do their lane better because I tried to
yeah,
learn theirs and then I'm not doing what I do best, which is writing.
yeah, exactly. So what the time is worth, and I find that right now I do enjoy, like, I do my own chores and stuff like that here, but as I level up, I'm not going to have that same time. Now, the one thing I never agree with these people is because I just enjoy it so much and I don't mind spending the time. And I think it's important is cooking. I love cooking, especially like barbecuing and stuff like that. And on my days off, I always make time to barbecue, and I will never like want to pay somebody to do that. I prefer
Right?
to
That's like the
do
joy in your life that you have,
exactly.
but you're
It's
assigning a
what
value to that. That value is more
yeah.
important to you.
But to some other people who hate cooking and they do it as a necessity, yeah, it's perfect for them to do that. But that I'm not one of those.
Right.
So
You'll listen to a lot of these fitness guys, and even the one guy that I had on all throughout his Twitter. It's like food food can be enjoyable, but also like the main point of food, if you're trying to be like this workout guy, is not to enjoy it so much. Like get used to the boring. Like because the best meal for you to be high protein and low fat. So that's gonna be like a chicken. That's gonna be a turkey type of thing. But like if you want, and it's easy. It's like meal prep. Cook a whole, whatever, 10 pounds of chicken on Sunday. Then you have it all week and mix it in salads and just keep eating this. Then people are like, oh, I'm bored. And like, we'll embrace the boring for that because to be a fitness person, it's hard to be exciting while meeting your macros and all these other things you're trying to do to achieve giant muscle mass and six packs and things like that. But if you're interested in specific flavors and you're interested in like the simmering and the smells, like maybe you're not as focused on, what that plate looks like at the end of the day for the calories because you're enjoying that while still you can still maintain like a lifestyle with it.
yeah, I think in that kind of case, you definitely could not blame, mix blend both into it. But for something like I have a friend of mine who does that, and he's a workout guy. He's not like he enjoys the flavors of food, but it's not as important to him. Where other people like myself, if I have to eat the same boring shit, I rather not even deal. I rather just like take a pill that has enough nutrients. Like I don't even
Right.
want to deal with that. If I have to eat the same thing every day, I don't even want to live.
I,
Because that's
I
the,
think so. What I've
the
seen, I think
joy.
with a lot of it's because I enjoy the flavors too, and like that gets me back and forth on my
I
path
travel
of
for that reason. When I travel, I don't care about your monuments. Yeah, that's great, great achievements. I want what's your food like? What do you guys eat at lunch every day? What's this new thing? How did you use those seasonings that we have them, but we don't use it that way?
right.
That's
If
what
you have
I
the
think.
main strip, the tourist trap, and go find the locals and see what they're doing and eating, and get a true sense of what that community has to offer. So I think with the fitness guys is that it's easy. Hey, I have a cheat meal. Hey, I'm going to have
Mm,
a cheeseburger today. But then like your stuff's not made and you're looking at it like, I want boring chicken again. But it's like, hey, I accept it. It's the mindset. The chicken's not boring. The chicken is fuel to my nutritional and health
yeah,
lifestyle goals. But I get caught up in like, oh no, I want like chicken parm tonight and I'm gonna have some bourbon. It's like, well, probably not
yeah.
great for, lifting and working out.
No, probably not. But I mean, again, what's more important? So this, I think working out is definitely important. But I'm sorry. Let me go.
Yeah. But that's not my goal is to not become one of those guys. My goal is just like
Yeah,
to try to live better,
exactly.
look a little better, do these things. And
Stay
part
a
of
little
that,
younger, stay more mobile, so I can
yeah,
go and play out with my
yeah, stay
son.
healthy with
Yeah.
it.
So with the time being left, let's get into the more woo.
Let's go, man. What do you got? What are you thinking?
So I was looking up to see any kind of new things, but I didn't really find any new things.
So there's this guy, his name is John Stewart, not the comedian. And there's this alien interview that I'm sure you saw. It's from like the 70s or 80s. And it was like this VHS tape and like, it's probably on like,
With
Fox,
Gray.
with a gray. Yeah. and then it's like mentally telepathically communicating, and like there are military like people who are coming in and out of the frame and stuff like this. And he has, in his mind, he has like validated this video. So there are like special codings on this like VHS tape that was like coming out, like almost like the Nimitz video, like surrounding
Yeah.
the frame. It has, you know, like the timestamps running and like these other things. So within those, he was able to find out that there were actually, you know, departments within the government that are just recently being released that match up with like those with that acronym. So before, like I didn't remember the acronym is, but if it was like, you know, let's just say it was United States Air Force. It was not that. Let's just say it was USAF. And he was going to the Army. He's like, what's USAF? And they're like, no, that's nothing, man. It doesn't stand for anything. No, that's not any of our departments. And he kept digging around. And one guy was like, no, I worked at the USAF and was actually under the Pentagon under here. And the guy's been able to dig and find this stuff.
Yeah.
So his most recent finding, apparently, because there's this guy, Victor, who's tied to this. You know, nobody ever has a last name, so you can't like nail them down. But this guy, Victor, would talk about how terrible the food was at this military base, that this like undisclosed base that they were at. So one of the latest things I saw was that apparently they tracked down the food vendor, and like the food was like notoriously known for being just terrible. Like everybody hated the food. And now they've been able to apparently find government receipts tying it to this food vendor whose food is terrible.
So, wow, that's a whole different angle.
So it's pretty interesting to see this old video, and then like you're able to like dive in and you know, get this new information that I don't think people ever, you know, you want to cover up the tracks of like, who's the guy interviewing them, or like, how do we dispose of the body, or the people who are here, but you never, I feel like the older conspiracies are easier to find out the truth from, because now there's been 50 years of
And they're a little
building off
relaxed,
of,
and most of those people are dead.
most of them are dead, but then like you would never think to cover up the food vendor. Like how would you know, you wouldn't even think
Yeah.
that a food vendor receipt would tie back to anything. And then the find like that one thing. So, you know, that was kind of interesting for that. But like no concrete evidence for a lot of it. And that's why like when the things like Terrence Howard comes out that he's talking about, like I find myself gravitating more to you know, that thought theory more of like, how do the aliens get here? Or I mean, are they here? You know, are you're able to transcend this, you know, this dimension that we're in due to some of this far out thinking that people like him have.
To kind of tie in both Terrence Howard stuff and that interview with the Gray, if it's the same one that you're talking about, when I think they asked him about, you know, traveling through space, and he's like, no, you guys don't get it. Like, time travel is traveling through space. You know, if you travel through space, you are time traveling. I remember seeing that interview a long time ago, if it's the same one I'm thinking of. But then going back to what Howard is saying, I think the most important thing to get out of this, out of all of the stuff that he talked about, it's a whole different way of thinking and a whole different way of looking at our reality. Even if he's completely full of it, which I don't think he is at all, there's still a lot of golden nuggets that just make complete sense. Like, you know, when you hear something, you're like, wow, that makes sense now. Like, it just, in your own life experience, it just all falls into place when it's explained to you a certain way. And that's how I feel about that whole interview with Terrence Howard.
I think Rogan's been firing on all cylinders lately. Like before the pandemic, he would have really interesting people on. And then during the pandemic, it was okay. But then after, you know, some of the, you know, I think he got caught up in, and not that he was wrong to get caught up in it. It would just became a little tiresome for me to just like the tyranny of the government and the overreach and all these things.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like I'm hearing this from all angles and I come here for interesting people. And like recently, his last few months, he has just been having, you know, back to these just like thought experiments of people coming on and, you know, like, hey, everybody gets, and I'm not saying letting these people go or walk away for, you know, any overreach they might have done or anything. But like, I feel like all the evidence is out now, and like to keep hammering and harping on it, like if nothing's ever going to happen, is kind of like a futile exercise and exercise and like madness. But like just getting back to these like original thinkers, and you know, I've heard people come out and like, oh, he's just expanding upon this person's idea that was like from the 70s, but whatever, like you're just adding to it or repackaging it to modern words for other people to start thinking about. Like this is stuff that I've never heard of or thought about. You know, I read all the articles, the science articles coming out. I read all the space articles coming out, and it's all trapped. Well, the M engine, the EM engine, and like it defies gravity because it's like it's moving without the opposite reaction that like NASA finally had. Like forever, it's like that's impossible. That violates the laws of thermodynamics, and you can't have this happen. Like no, there is more to this. There is more, and it is
They
an
said that about
ancient.
planes and rockets too.
Right, everything's impossible. And this is what we talked about too. But like it's you're in this ceiling that you set for yourself. That like, hey, we can never do this. But I think there's just this technology and this thought process that was around for a long, long time that was co-opted, or people were just trying to say like maybe this is like free energy, so get away from it, and like we want to sell oil, and people made a shit ton of money and are just kind of hiding like all this ancient Egypt stuff and mixed with the ancient aliens. I think all that stuff's a lot more related, and those people knew things that like we're just starting to begin to scratch that knowledge.
Yeah. And with all the stuff that he talked about, it just brought me back to my own dreams. And because to me that's a different reality. That's where my mind can unwind and show me, different things. And I think when if you think about the stuff that he's talking about and you bring that into your dreams, like you're just gonna have extremely trippy dreams. Because that reminds me, think I talked about it on the last podcast where there was this guy I had interviewed and he was talking about how each universe is its own bubble. And when you're in the dream state, instead of trying to go up into the next level, just step sideways and step out of it into the next one. And I remember I was in like a dream state and I thought about that and I just literally stepped sideways and I was in this tunnel, which you'll find it's in book 1 of United Earth. I actually took that whole dream and put it into the book. And when I'm traveling through this tunnel, it was a geometric tunnel with lights and different geometric shapes and going through there. And when I got to this area, I heard like my guides going, "Oh, congratulations. Oh my God." Like you just stepped out into a different realm and stuff like that. And when I got to the midpoint, they were going to take me somewhere else. I couldn't. There was these 2 guards and it looked like 2 security guards, huge black guys, dressed in a black military, and which I found weird. And it's a classroom setting, and all I had to do was sit down, but I was floating above it, and I couldn't ground myself to sit down to move into the next door, which I could see the next door. And they was like, "Just sit down," like I hear these voices telling me, and I'm like, I can't, just sit down. And I just got pulled right back. I went right through the door, got pulled back through the tunnel and woke up and I was like, damn it. I was so
Have you been
disappointed.
able to do that again?
No,
Okay.
no. And I did that a couple of years before I wrote that book. So when I wrote it, that's why I put it in there. That's in book 1. Yeah. I believe it's in book 1.
Because I feel like I have not had an experience like that, but I do feel like a lot of that stuff is almost kind of like a video game type of thing. Like when you're playing Super Mario Brothers, and then I have to run and jump on this moving thing, and then like stop myself before I run off and come back. But like it took you 50 times as a kid to do that. Fuck, I have to start back at the beginning of the beginning of the level is so easy, and like the middle part, like I just need. And once you get past that, that's so easy. But it takes you a long time. Whatever video game it might be.
What about when you like the way I look at it that way as well, but especially using Mario Brothers as Super Mario Brothers as an analogy, is when you jump over the flag onto the high point and all of a sudden you discover these warp tunnels. And
Right, to go over it, right?
Yeah, that's like, so you're now stepping above the whole game itself and going into a different kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's the
It'd
way.
be interesting to see what would have happened if you got through that doorway, like what the next obstacle would have been.
Yeah, or because again, I think the way you're in your dreams, you can only expand to the level of your mind. So of course, there'll be things there to like, hey, if you push past this, you'll get into a whole different level. And that's the one thing I love about dreams, astral projection, lucid dreams, is that it really, for example, if you're driving in your dream and you don't have a steering wheel, obviously that means you have zero self-control. But if you, for example, driving, you got control, but you got no brakes, you don't know how to limit yourself. So especially the driving analogy, I just love the way dreams spit things in your face. The ugly, the beautiful about you just spits it right from your face. And that's what I love about dreams. If you're taking the time to look at it and register, So I know a lot of people will say, I don't remember my dreams. I think, oh, for example, when I was growing up in my family, it was extremely important to always talk about it because the way they looked at it is like in my dreams, I can get that winning lotto number. So that's where they put the importance. And I'm like, if there is a God, I don't think God gave us these dreams to win lotto. I think it's deeper than that. But the point is, I already had trained my brain to, as soon as I wake up, to think about it. So for those of you that say don't dream, as soon as you wake up, have that pen and paper ready. I don't need to do that anymore because I've been doing it for so many years that I already, think about my dreams. But have that pen and paper ready, write it down, and you don't have to get the dream right away. Sometimes you'll be like going up the stairs and all of a sudden you remember that dream that you had 5 years ago. Now it's important. So that's tying everything that we've been talking about, because I feel like I don't think there's one subject we talked about that doesn't tie into each other. And with the dreams, manifesting things within your dreams is way easier than in reality, because what you think actually does happen in the universe, right away.
You're not confined by the laws of physics or your self-doubt. You're already there. So I think that's, part of the dreams too, especially if you can start doing the, this lucid dreaming and, this astral projection, is that you've already expanded your mind to these things can happen. I think a lot of kids, like my son will tell me dreams that he's like fully active in. And I'm like, oh my, like, I'm so jealous of like that you're doing this and remembering. He has like a whole story for it. As an adult, you start putting these limitations, or, oh, the world is only, it's physical, it's concrete, it's this. I can't go faster than 50 miles an hour because it's a speed limit. And, I have to go take these roads to get to the grocery store. But in your mind, you're like, oh, like, boom, like the car can actually start flying now and I can get to a different level. It's kind of like this Mario thing, that you can do.
Or I could transform the car into something else. But
Right.
I was going to say the importance of, as a parent, when your kid's telling your dream, for you to listen, because I've seen so many parents go like, oh, yeah, whatever. And they don't like listen to what they're saying, help them figure out what it means in their own life. Is it them just expanding their imagination, or is their subconscious trying to tell them like, hey, maybe you should stop doing that and do this? Whatever the case may be. But the importance of talking with your kids and family members about your dreams, like, for me, it's just so highly valued. It's like, I feel like not talking about your dreams is like not talking about your day. That's how deep it is for me personally.
But
That
you
is
spend a typical work day, but 8 hours, whatever, doing whatever it is, and you come home and you talk about it, you sleep for 8 hours. Like, if you remember stuff from it, that's part of like your day and like who you are.
Yeah, definitely. Because if I'm having the same consistent nightmare, obviously I'm being told something, like I'm being told like, hey, you keep repeating these same mistakes. That's why you're having the same nightmare, or you're having the same repeated dream. Like, I remember I've had dreams where like I've eaten nuts and all of a sudden I got like all these nuts in my mouth and I digging out and digging out. When I wake up, I floss and I'm like, oh, that's what it's telling me. Like, it's not always like what I dream about, but it might be some piece of food that's rotting in there and I need to, so I've had dreams where they're telling me basically in a very kind of gruesome way, like, hey, go floss.
Back in the bathroom. So my son, I try to tell him to write down, like, as he's telling me these detailed dreams, I'm like, bud, like, go write this down. Like, because one, they're like fascinating. I think would be like a good exercise for him. But also, I'm like, these are also amazing short stories And, you know, like what you're saying is interesting to you. So a 10-year-old publishing a book for other 10-year-olds kind of seems like that's in their market. That's like what they would want to listen to or hear. That's the stuff that they're thinking. So I'm
Yeah,
still
and
working on that. So
when the funny thing is, I've had so many kids come up to me and tell me I want to be a writer, and I'm like, okay, then why aren't you writing? Oh, when I become an adult. And I said, is it illegal for kids to write book? I said, I didn't know that. And they're like, no, it's not. And so the kids have this own limiting belief and this fear that I can see in their face, like the boogie bumps to like, don't look back because he's right behind you.
yeah,
And, I try to tell them like, hey, you can be a better writer than me. And they just look at me like I'm stupid. Like, and I was like, no, like you starting at this age. And I said, so what if your book is terrible, the first one? Who cares?
it's
Just
the
write.
reps you're getting in. It's the exercises. We talked about the kids playing street ball in your neighborhood growing up and want to be in the NBA or whatever. But it's like, what were you doing besides going around messing with your friends or like, you know, saying I got
Yeah.
next? Like, were you dribbling for an hour with your left hand? Were you dribbling with your right hand? Were you crossing over? Were you running sprints? Were you doing all this stuff? There's a Caitlin Clark video they show. I guess she was working out at her house in the off season, like, you know, I guess she lives in Idaho or Iowa or somewhere, but like half of the gym is in a bar and the other half's outside, but it's a full court thing. And she's just running suicides and coming back, and it's her dad or her brother just feeding her 3-pointers. And she's just doing this nonstop. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
what it takes to be a pro, not to go
That's what
outside
it
for 20
takes.
minutes and shoot around and then be like, no, okay, I'm kind of done. I'm going to move on. But like, and as a writer, if you can overcome that obstacle as a kid, because as an adult, it's hard to do anything because it's easy to say it's hard. Like I have to like lift weights today, or like today's day one. Like I'll just do it tomorrow. I can't write 1,000 words today. I'm too busy. But if you did that as a kid, it just flows into being who you are, and
Yeah.
then like you already have those reps in.
Well, well, going back to something that is extremely important. I remember as a kid, I hated even hearing the word discipline. Self-discipline is the foundation to everything in your life. I don't care what you're talking about, whether we're talking about spirituality, economics, so your family economics, whatever. I don't care what it is, psychology, your own personal psychology. Discipline is the foundation to all of this, and this is why, like for kids, you know, teaching them the self-discipline is one of the most important lessons, because when you have self-discipline, everything else is easier. Because, for example, like getting up every day to practice basketball for 2-3 hours, that it takes a high amount of self-discipline, because there are days you will be excited to do it. Most days you will not be. I don't care how much you love basketball or how much you love writing or whatever, doing this podcast, make sure that you publish a new podcast every Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever you publish. It takes a high level of discipline, and to level up in what you're trying to reach takes a high level of discipline too. So that it's just, it's so, it's so important that the self-discipline. I think most of us don't reach the goals we want to because we don't have the self-discipline.
But you
We
need a
don't.
foundation of self-discipline to even have self-discipline. And I think a lot of us, myself and being included in this, and a lot of us
Yeah, me
have
too.
a rocky foundation
Exactly.
of self-discipline, but like, to break that down and rebuild that foundation.
But I found that when you do the things that you should be doing on the days you don't want to do it, is how you build the discipline. Because when you can do it on those days you really don't want to do it, like for the last 3 weeks, I started getting back into doing push-ups and stuff like that. And, the last 2 days I did not want to do push-ups. And I said, no, we do it no matter what. I don't care how you're feeling. We do it no matter what. Even if we do half the amount, we're still doing it. And that is, and I try to do that with writing too. I don't care if I write 10 words today. That is what I'm going to do. And that's how you build the discipline. Do it, I've heard people say, like, set the bar low for these things that are going to help you progress in life. Meditate for 5 minutes. That's fine. Meditate for 5 minutes. Tomorrow you feel like crap again. You feel like do it for 3. but you did it, you know. And as you do these things on the days you don't want to do them, you're gonna be so ahead of everybody else because they're not even doing that much.
Right? Need the reps in, and there's times, like, whatever it is that you're trying to do daily in life. Talking about push-ups. So in January, I did a push-up challenge with my buddy, and I think it was 2,000 or 2,200 in a month. It was like something like the army does for the soldiers. There's 22 soldiers die. So you try to do 2,200 push-ups in a month, and it came out to be something like 72 or 74 a day. So the first day was like fucking terrible. Like I hadn't done push-ups in years. And like, even if you lift weights, like doing a push-up's different than lifting weights. And like, like if you're not doing cardio, you can't go run, even though you're in this great shape. But like, so I, had a lot to make up. But once I got into it, like it was really good. And the days that I didn't want to do it, yet I had to force myself because I'm like, I'm not doing 150 tomorrow. Like I need to do my 74 today, So I would do those. Like the self-satisfaction was higher on those days than the days that I felt great of like, I'm going to knock this out and I'm going to do this in 10 minutes and then be good to go and go on with my day. Yeah, my energy would be higher and I would
The
keep that
amount of
like level
dopamine,
would be there. But like the days where I'm like, this sucks, I'm not doing this. But like, bro, you got to do this, man. You got to knock this out. And you would do it. And you're like, fuck yeah, I did it, man. I did that. Like you're like, I would ride a higher high.
much higher than the days you wanted to do it. I agree 100%.
Right. And I think that helps get you back the next day. Like, that's what you have to do.
And I think that is the key, right? What you just mentioned right there is the key to achieving your goals. I don't care what it is. That, take small steps. Small steps. We're so focused on the big steps that we forget these small steps. And we're skipping these small steps. And those small little steps like that, like 20, if you look at 2,200 push-ups in a month, but when you break it down, 74, all right. You haven't done push-ups in a long time. 74 push-ups. Oh my God. Break it down hourly. How many push-ups is that okay, so we're awake for what? 16 hours? 14 hours, depending on the person?
Yeah. You do
What
10 hours, 7.4 push-ups an hour. Like you can do 8 push-ups, you do 7 push-ups, and the last one you just do 10. Like, and that's what some of the times I had to do that because I had to get up. I did 20 the first day. And I was like, dude, my arms. The first day wasn't bad. That day 2 and day 3, you're like, my arms fucking hate me. I don't know how I'm going to do any of them. And then you fight through that, and you're like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I can do this. My daughter's second grade school has a sign in the classroom. And it says, I can do hard things. And I think that is amazing for them to have that there to say it. And it's kind of been like a little family mantra that like we say to each other like around the house, like, I can do hard things. The kid's like, oh, my math test came up. Like, I can do hard things. Because you have to believe in that. But you get stuck in this. At 2,200, like that's astronomical. I can't do that. Meditate. Yogis meditate for an hour a day. They meditate for 16 hours. Like I'll never get that. No, but you will do. You will get 5 minutes a day for this week. You'll get 6 minutes a day or whatever it might be. Like, but just baby steps to an end goal. Break it down.
When you break things down to hourly, and if they're still too big hourly, when you break it down to per, every 10 minutes, it loses this big monsters all of a sudden, like, a roach. You can step on a roach easy. So it doesn't feel as big. So whatever your goals may be in life, whether they're spiritual goals, economic goals, break them down into the smallest increments you can. And it doesn't feel that big.
No, I think that's great advice. I think you have a great outlook on life. I think I have a similar outlook that I'm trying to achieve and to put into this. I think if we can, keep our goals in front of us, then, you're going to get your 1 million book sales. I'm going to have my 1 million subscribers, and we're going to get there because the system we are set up. I don't know about all of us. We or the system is set up for us to say like, no, I can't do this. I'm just going to do whatever hand was dealt to me. But guess what? Like in poker, you get to play that hand and, you can fold and, restack up. You don't have to go all in on the shitty hand that you were dealt. Be like, nope, I'm going to fold that one and get dealt a better one. And I'm going to see what happens with this. And I think we're both trying to do that.
The key thing is to fail often. And I don't mean like fail on purpose, but not every show that you do is going to be amazing. And not every book I write is going to be the bestseller.
You know how to navigate that then the next time it comes up.
Yeah. So what? Like sometimes you're not going to be able to do as great, or you're just going to fail. And that's great. Like failing is the most amazing thing that you could do. Because
you survive, often. You live, and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. But do it often and you will become amazing. Like dude, how did you do that? It's like I failed a lot.
So my wife will love like if the kids will come home or like whatever, like they didn't get a home run in baseball or something. There's that Chumbawamba song, Tub Thumping, where he's like, I get knocked down. And I'll start like singing that. And my wife's like, shut up with that. I'm like, no, but hey, you got knocked down. Like you got to get back up. You got to get back up. This is like the Rocky. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It's how many times you get back. Life kicks you in the face. Like there's
Yeah.
all these great motivational things. As I talked about earlier, my whiteboard, I'm doing that this week. I'm putting stupid quotes on there that mean something. And one of them is going to be say, stop using negative words. As I just said, they're stupid quotes, but they're motivational. Like these are the things that are there for you.
One of the things I heard Neville Goddard, and please look this guy up. He was talking about that his mom used to tell when they would have self-doubt like that when they were kids. And this is so I think this is like in the 20s. And she would tell them, you're a Goddard, your last name is Goddard. Like, what are you doing? Self-doubting, like you're a Goddard. So all of a sudden, like he said, as a kid, we had so much importance into our last name, even though like our grandfather was a bum or something like that. Like it didn't matter. Like and she wasn't even of that last name because that's her marriage name. But she gave it such importance because she knew that her kids would feel like they're able to do more because they looked at their last name different.
Right.
And I
There's
was
a
like, wow,
basketball
that's
player
amazing.
on the Clippers, Russell Westbrook, and he started out, I don't know when his rookie year was, like 2008 or something. And he started off as a high prospect, great player. I think he won MVP one or two times. He had triple double record, but in the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, like his shooting percentage is sometimes terrible. Like sometimes he just feels himself too much. So some of the writers would call him West Brick, but instead of Westbrook, they call him West Brick. And he freaked out on these writers like multiple times, but he went on like this rant like this. He'd be like, that last name is my family's last name. He's like, this is the name that my kids have. He's like, it is not West Brick, it is Westbrook. He's like, there is a pride to that name. Like, that's what it is. Like, you don't let anyone put you in your place. Like, you put yourself where you want to be. So I thought that was great with him. But Ramon, I got to cut this short. I love this interview. You are welcome back. We're going to get into more of the woo next time or this, but I think visualization, motivation, setting goals and success. I think this is an important conversation to have. And I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, because really quickly, like one of my all-time goals, obviously, is for me to meet extraterrestrials and have a full conversation with them. And that it all ties together. You know what I mean? It all ties together. So I think with the visualization, I also sit there and visualize like, a space coming and what it would be like meeting these people like, hey, and asking them questions like, I got a friend he would love to interview.
Look me up, man. That's it. We'll have 3 people on the podcast. I'm in. Where can people find you?
So the best place to find me would be at my website, which is rmalmonte.com. I'm also on TikTok under rmalmonte. And those are the 2 main places. I'm not on Instagram anymore, so I apologize. I just can't do Instagram anymore. So nothing personal, because I know a lot of people take it very personal. It's like, yo, why you cut me off? It's like, no, it has nothing to do with you. So you can also email me at info@rmalmonte.com. So those are the 2 best ways to get in contact with me. And all my books are on Amazon as well. And on the TikTok shop, you can find all my books and I will send them.
Awesome. We're talking about the value of time and stuff like this. I know I'm old here. I still don't understand really the concept of Instagram. Like, I just don't understand how Facebook wasn't like the same and slightly better. That you could put links in your Facebook messages. I truly don't really understand Instagram. Like, you just have pictures, you have one sentence, you can't put you're like, hey, links in the bio, look at, like, it's really.
Well, to be honest, one of the main reason I cut both Facebook and Instagram at separate times was because I kept getting these emails to reset my password. And I was like, whoa. So I cut it. And that was the same like with WhatsApp. And it's funny because they're all the same company.
Right. So you're looking back and you're like, hey, maybe it is the ownership of it. Because when you post Instagram, there was a thing of like you could post to Facebook as well. But then I was tied to my personal Facebook and I was like, I didn't want all of my podcast business stuff getting
exactly
cross-referenced.
That's the same with me. So Sorry, I just ended up cutting it off. So I apologize to anybody who was in contact. But best way is just email me. That is the number one, because with TikTok, who knows what's gonna happen with that? I might be gone, or I might get banned, because I sneezed during something, something.
Yeah. The US has taken over. I think they're trying to sell it for parts and they're going to buy it and repackage it. That's what I've heard. So we'll see. But hey, man, I appreciate your time. Put all the links in the show notes and we'll be in touch. And I look forward to having you on for a third time.
Yes, definitely.
All right, man. Stay well. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right, everyone. That was our show. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast. Like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on all things wild and weird. Check out the links in the show notes for more information on our guest. The biggest support you can offer is to tell everyone about the podcast. Until next time.